Howdy, y'all. Today, I wanted to show you guys some work I've been doing on a scroll pane. So, one of the fundamental elements we want to be able to do in any UI system is scroll our contents. And I finally got this guy working after a bunch of refactoring. Uh, it required actually resetting pretty much a lot of the defaults and then changing on how the CS grid stuff is integrated. But as you can see, it's working pretty nicely. And a good benefit, even when I go over, it automatically gets rid of the scroll bar. Now let's say we want to adjust the size a little bit. Um, we just go into the settings here, update our size. This is something I plan to expose maybe as a user setting uh, so that users of an application could override this. Of course, app developers can do or change their settings as they want. Um, as you can see here, all we have is a little scroll pane. We have to import the scroll pane widget, and then we add some contents. So we do need to use the contents modifier, just so that the scroll pane can take the contents and place them in the correct place in its, I don't want to call it markup, but in its grid layout. Um, And you can see here, we just do a little bit of offset. We use this thing called max content. So the nice thing here is it will go through all of the children contents on this vertical pane and find the largest one and use that as our height per element. Well, actually, that's not quite right. It goes through each element, gets its content, and then uses that. So let's see again how that works. So we can see up here, it's just going to maximize it to the size of each individual content. So that should make layout pretty simple. Features like that. There's still some work in refining and tuning the API for everything, but it should give us a nice, robust um, way to do layouts. In this case, it's just combining a scroll panel with our vertical panel. Now, over here on the right, I wanted to show you guys some of the implementation of this. As you can see, it takes a little bit of code, but for a scroll panel, it's actually not too bad. So we have our Figuro widget here. We have active, disabled. I don't actually implement any of those things yet. We have our settings for scroll settings. We have our window for a scroll window. And then, of course, we have our XY bars and drag start, which is used for dragging the windows. When we grab our little scroll bar up here, we need somewhere to store that guy. Scroll settings, you can see pretty simple, whether it's horizontal, vertical, left, top. So that just sets some of our basics. Right now, really only vertical works. At some point soon, I need to get the horizontal scroll bar working. It shouldn't be too hard. Most of the math is actually symmetric, so it uses the same equations, usually position or vectors. So everything is already done. It just needs some testing and plumbing in. Now the scroll window is a little bit more interesting. This gives us our scroll by, our view size, content overflow, and our view ratio. So a lot of this comes from the work I've done on Fidgety, adding some of the scroll bars there and everything. But I cleaned up the math, renamed things so that they're, not terrible short names, and made them a little bit more reusable. So now they're broken up into these procs um, that compute all the different parts we need for a scroll bar. The nice part is it should make it pretty easy to reuse for different projects or different purposes. Um, let's look at the calculate window piece here. You can see we're effectively calculating this view ratio and the content overflow. Both of those give us this idea of like, okay, here our actual vertical panel that we're computing has a height. So once the vertical part grid lays out all of these child elements, it'll then set a height for this element. So now in our scroll pane, we can take that, find the height of our child box, and calculate our window ratio, which is effectively the ratio of where this bar is. You got to do some annoying math, kind of invert it, whether you take off the view size or the content size. It's a little bit tedious to figure that out, but it all kind of makes sense, especially if you want this to be one-to-one to your scroll and act appropriately. Because if you do a simple, just divide the ratios out, it won't come out correctly. You'll be dragging and the ratios just don't quite match, which is really annoying. Um, so let's see how we get that child value, because this might be useful for people wanting to see a little bit more. So here, it looks like I am getting it from our window here. Okay, oh, sorry, I grabbed the wrong proc up here. Okay, so this is one we want to look at. So calculate window. So we just take our screen box, which is kind of more advanced feature, hidden internal. Effectively, this is the rendered size of the scroll box here, and then of course our child box, which is our vertical, and that's our contents, our children. So I need to do some work on this, but the effective idea is that we tell the widget where to, what items to place, and it'll place them in the right place. In this case, we actually need to look it up, find our children, and take the first element. So without this contents bit here, it would render without the right hierarchy setup. Kind of similar to HTML templates with their contents and template and slot mechanisms and all of that. Now we have a bunch of stuff to calculate our drag, again, just starting out where our drag starts, our delta, and divide it by our, window view ratio, update our scroll, and then call refresh on our widget. Of course, if it's an exit, we just stop dragging our panel. And then here's the actual UI for the scroll bar. You can see nothing too crazy here. Essentially, we have our widget. We check for our scroll event, connect it to our scroll function here, and clip our content. And we want that clip content so that our children don't spill out for us. I had went to make the clip content default to true for everything, but it does have a fair bit of overhead. Now here we have a rectangle, which is just our children, essentially. Kind of going through it, we do some stuff, we set our column sizes, things like that. I forget why I set this. I'd have to dive into it a little bit more. It might not be needed. It could be one of those things I added early on. And here's our children content. So this is how we tell the widget and the contents where we want to place our actual content. And then afterwards, we can actually add more nodes and everything like that. If we didn't have the template contents, the child widgets here would just get added to the end. So that's another reason why we want this guy. So we do our children, we compute their stuff, we call their draw functions, or methods, slots, whatever we want to call them. And then we call our scroll function. So that's important, we need to be careful on the ordering here. And again, we include this scroll panel, it's some internal details, and yeah, that's really it. So we can see here when we have a vertical bar, we draw the vertical bar on this, just connect it to our scroll bar. And again, you can see I haven't really set up our horizontal one, though in theory everything should be here. And it's a little bit annoying, your bar Y, start X, your bar Y, start Y, all that stuff. But again, it's not too bad. It's about 150 lines to implement a nice scrolling reactive panel here, right? So also, if we add or remove children to this guy, it should automatically update this guy. So anytime we change any of our children, it should update, but sometimes we may need to be careful and send an update event to our parent widget, just in case. Because again, the ordering is our children run, and if they draw separately and change their size, we may need to manually update that. That's kind of similar to Qt, and there might be some stuff we add later on where we update layout or, have an event for notifying that the layout has been updated. Um, but that is essentially it. That gives us everything we really need to do the scroll bar. Um, and again, I've been pretty happy with how the math turned out here once I cleaned it up and I went back through and actually thought about what I was doing. My initial take in Fidgety, I just kind of hacked it until it worked. Um, and, that's not a really good way to name things, understand what's actually going on. So now we have our, different functions calculator, our scroll amount, our scroll bar drag amount, and our nice clean settings that we can break apart here. Well, I hope that is useful for y'all, and I hope that you like the new scroll bar. I'm going to actually start trying to develop some example widgets now and get that rolling. So I will see you guys later. Ciao.